For a studio known for animated fun, DreamWorks has a surprising habit of giving its villains some deeply unpleasant send-offs. So, let's rank those deaths from least to most gruesome. Starting at the very bottom, we have Fairy Godmother from Shrek 2 at number 17. For someone who causes an insane amount of chaos, she honestly gets a pretty gentle ending. Fairy Godmother spends the whole film blackmailing King Harold into forcing a union between Fiona and Charming. Even moments before she dies, she's still trying to get rid of our favorite ogre.
Ogres don't live happily ever after!
Karma snapped back because this same spell rebounds and hits her instead. And that's really it. After spending the whole movie controlling everyone else's happily ever after, she meets her own ending by the very magic she uses to control people. Still, compared to the deaths higher on this list, Fairy Godmother's demise is about as painless as it gets. Which brings us to another villain who goes out in the blink of an eye. At number 16, we have Tai Lung from Kung Fu Panda, who spends the entire film looking completely unstoppable. This snow leopard tears through prison security and defeats Shifu and the Furious Five like it's nothing. Despite all that, Po takes him down with one move.
Skadoosh. It was at this moment that he knew. He f***ed up.
And just like that, Tai Lung is gone. For such a powerful villain, his death is shockingly quick. But what puts him slightly above Fairy Godmother is the fight leading up to his death. The poor guy really goes through a lot. He not only gets defeated by Po, but Kai also steals his chi in the spirit realm in Kung Fu Panda 3. And not to mention how the chameleon also brings him back and fights him in Kung Fu Panda 4. Even in the afterlife, this guy can't catch a break. Regardless, Tai Lung's actual death is relatively fast and painless. At number 15, we have Humpty Dumpty from Puss in Boots. He and Puss were once like family, dreaming of finding the magic beans together. Then Humpty lets jealousy rot his brain and betrays Puss, getting him thrown in jail. And this is all because he can't handle the fact that his best friend turned out to be, well, likable. Despite this betrayal, Puss finds it in himself to forgive Humpty, but that reconciliation doesn't last very long.
So I won't make you choose.
Humpty! Considering we don't see Humpty actually crack on screen,
Pause.
this death isn't especially gruesome, but I think we can all agree that it was an emotional scene. However, it's worth noting that the credits scene adds a little ambiguity to his death when we see him up in the sky with the Great Terror and Golden Goose. Whether that's just Humpty's spirit in the sky or he actually survived is a bit of a mystery. Either way, Humpty Dumpty's ending is a sad one to witness. On the other hand, at number 14, we have General Mandible from Ants, whose death we were rooting for. This guy spends the whole film acting like an insect dictator, planning to wipe out the weaker ants and rebuild the colony with only the strongest. Well, he may be strong and fit, but he's also a little bit of a dum-dum.
I am the colony!
Oh, look out!
This arrogance is exactly what gets him killed. Mandible charges in so confidently that he ends up falling back into the colony with Z. Unfortunately for him, Mandible doesn't land in the water like Z does. Now, if this were real life, we know that General Mandible would have survived because of an ant's low terminal velocity. However, we're dealing with cartoon logic here, so this guy definitely goes out in a nasty way, considering the squelch noise when he hits the root. But he's not the only villain on this list who doesn't survive a fall, because at number 13 we have Dr. Zara from Abominable, who manages to go from ambitious researcher to full-on menace by the end of the film. This woman is so obsessed with capturing Everest that she's willing to hurt anyone in her way, including a child.
We could have been a good couple, but you one crazy ass bitch.
Clearly by this point, Zara is too far gone to care about anything except getting what she wants, and it's this same recklessness that eventually destroys her. There are a few ways she could have gone from there. Either the crash kills her on impact, the snow crushes the vehicle, or she ends up buried alive inside what's basically an icy coffin. So while the death itself is more or less quick on screen, these implications make it a lot uglier. At number 12, we have the spiny mandrilla from the Croods in New Age. This thing is a ruthless predator from the start, even gobbling up the creatures working under it. And unlike the others on this list who go relatively fast, the spiny mandrilla has to suffer through multiple rounds of punishment before it finally dies. This guy also gets jabbed in the eye with a stick, and just when everyone thinks this guy is a goner, he comes back for more misery. How he held on to a peanut for that long is beyond me. Although this death is undoubtedly gruesome, there's still a comedic element to it. However, the same can't be said for Grimmel the Grizzly from How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World at number 11. This guy spends the whole film desperately trying to capture Toothless, and it's this obsession that gets him killed. During the final fight, Grimmel clings to Hiccup in midair, so focused on dragging him down that he forgets one very important detail. Who knew a prosthetic leg would actually be a blessing in disguise? Unlike the previous villain, Grimmel's death has no goofy edge to it. The panic on his face as Hiccup drops his fake leg just adds to the horror of his death as he plummets into the ocean. From that height alone, the water may as well be concrete. And even if the fall somehow doesn't kill him on impact, there's still the freezing water waiting below to finish the job. Not to mention possible sea creatures who could gobble him up. Either way, Grimmel's days of dragon hunting are well and truly over. Much like our next villain's days of hunting, a certain green ogre. At number 10, we've got Prince Charming from Shrek the Third, whose whole life has been an embarrassment. Unsurprisingly, his death is no different. This guy finally has the opportunity of a lifetime after capturing Shrek and taking Far, Far Away. But instead of just killing him, he decides to turn it into a terrible performance.
Speed with might, with soft and bouncy.
It's this level of unseriousness that gets him killed. Although the tower-crushing Charming is already brutal, the fact that he dies in front of a bunch of people laughing at him makes it so much worse. Speaking of things falling onto people, at number 19, we've got Lord Shen from Kung Fu Panda 2, whose death is one of the most poetic on this list. You see, he dies at the hands of his own creation, and if the weight of the massive cannon doesn't kill him, then the fireworks definitely do. But Shen only has himself to blame for this event, as he's the one who cuts the ropes during his fight with Po. This guy spends the entire film trying to outrun a prophecy that says a warrior in black and white will be his end, which drives him mad enough to wipe out almost all of the pandas, only to finally accept death as the cannon falls onto him, perhaps realizing that the warrior in black and white might have been himself all along. So, in the end, Shen dies after a lifetime of running away from his demons, which is something Pitch Black from Rise of the Guardians can relate to at number 8. In the movie, Pitch uses his nightmares to spread fear and make children stop believing in the Guardians. Eventually, they turn on him instead. Like Shen, Pitch becomes a victim of his own creation as the nightmares feed on his fear of being forgotten. But his death gets dragged out more as he desperately tries to escape them while they pull him underground. Now, there is some room for debate here, since Pitch, as the embodiment of fear itself, may never permanently die. But honestly, that almost makes it worse, considering that no matter how many times he comes back, he'll meet a similar fate as long as children have hope in the world. Up next, we have Vantra from The Wild Robot at number 7, who proves that being made of metal doesn't stop a death from looking brutal. Vantra spends the whole climax hunting Roz down with that cold and unstoppable machine energy. That is, until Roz turns on the ship's magnetic beam.
We will just keep coming until we have you.
What makes this death so gruesome is how Vantra is pulled apart piece by piece. Her death is only less disturbing because she's made of metal instead of flesh. So even if Vantra can't technically feel pain the way a person would, the visual itself is still terrible enough to rank this high. And speaking of terrible ways to die, at number 6 we've got Chef Bergen from Trolls, who goes through quite a bit before her eventual demise. And that's only part of it. Chef also gets hit in the head, blasted in the eyes with lemon juice, and shoved into a serving cart that's set on fire along with Creek. And just when you think that's enough punishment...
Wait!
After everything she goes through, getting swallowed whole is honestly such a brutal way to go because it isn't a quick death. It's a lot of waiting around in fear before the stomach acids kick in and immediately kill you. For a villain who spent the movie trying to eat other creatures, getting gulped down herself is some very ugly karma. Like some others on this list, Chef Bergen's death has a bit of uncertainty around it considering Creek comes back and trolls the beat goes on. However, since there's been no mention of Chef, it's safe to say she's finally resting in peace. Or, well, pieces. And the same can be said for Lord Farquaad from Shrek at number 5. One moment he's standing there trying to force Fiona into marriage, the next, he's lunch. Just that scream is enough to amp up the gruesome factor in this death. What really pushes this death higher, though, is the fact that Farquaad doesn't die immediately, as is evident by the film's special feature. He's still alive in there for who knows how long, which means he has time to sit in fear and panic, waiting for the dragon's stomach to finish the job. And unlike Chef Bergen's death, a dragon's stomach is much smaller than that of a hill monster, so there's not much room to maneuver anyway, even for Farquaad. Moving on to number 4, we have Galaxar from Monsters vs. Aliens. This guy is so confident about his victory that he sets his ship to self-destruct while the others are still on board, fully expecting to make it out alive. His plans get foiled though when Susan gets the Quantonium back and escapes with the others. Unfortunately, Galaxar isn't so lucky. What makes his death so much worse, though, is that he's literally just seconds away from freedom. If he had a bit more time, he could have survived. Instead, he gets a fiery death sentence as his ship explodes with him still inside. Death by incineration is definitely high up on the gruesome scale. But Jack Horner from Puss in Boots: The Last Wish somehow tops it at number 3.
What did I do to deserve this? I mean, what specifically?
You know, I like that he's fully aware of all the terrible things he's done. Throughout the film, Jack lies, steals, and even murders the people working for him as if their lives mean nothing. Even Ethical Bug eventually gives up on him.
You're an irredeemable monster! What took you so long, idiot?
Wrong move, buddy, because the Ethical Bug comes back for his revenge, destroying a part of the wishing star, which soon leads to Jack's death. This villain gets dragged down into the wishing star itself, sinking into that glowing mess. It's bad enough that he's literally drowning, but the sharp shards of the broken wishing star must also be cutting into his body as he sinks. The cherry on top is that the star explodes with Jack still inside it, blowing him up into a million tiny pieces. And speaking of explosions, you know what makes me want to combust with joy? When you hit that subscribe button. But moving on to actual explosions, at number 2, we've got Kai from Kung Fu Panda 3. After tearing through the spirit realm and absorbing the chi of practically every master he can get his hands on, Kai goes after Po for one final power grab. Emphasis on final.
That's too much! No!
He's so eager to absorb Po's chi, he doesn't realize the panda's also channeling the chi from the whole village. Kai therefore overloads on all the energy until his whole body explodes. But what adds to his demise is that Kai also took a bunch of blows from Po before his eventual explosion. The combined pain of it all sounds excruciating. But somehow, that's still not as gruesome as our most painful villain death. At the very top, we have the Red Death from How to Train Your Dragon, whose final moments are just pure destruction. You'd think the worst part is this creature exploding as he crashes into the ground. His death, however, is set in motion way earlier. While still in midair, Toothless fires plasma blasts at Red Death's wings, essentially rendering it incapable of flying properly as it cries out in pain. What's more, Hiccup realizes that right before the Red Death breathes fire, it releases flammable gas, and so he uses that to give the final blow. The The studio really gave us internal combustion, a crash landing, and a full-on explosion all in one go, making it the most gruesome DreamWorks villain death ever. Now, even though that wraps up the confirmed deaths, there are still a few honorary DreamWorks villains I want to mention just to speculate on their demise. Starting with Drago Bloodfist from How to Train Your Dragon 2. Yeah, that's not exactly a promising exit. Drago is still riding the Bewilderbeast when it disappears into the ocean, which means he's basically carried off into freezing open water with no real way out. The movie never confirms what happens next, but none of the possibilities are good. Without a second arm, maybe he gets dragged deeper into the freezing water and drowns. Or perhaps the ocean sends some giant sea creature his way to finish the job. Either way, it's looking real grim for Drago. On the other hand, Zekel Khan from The Road to El Dorado has an even more ambiguous ending.
Seize him.
After failing to show them the entrance to El Dorado, Zekel Khan gets captured by the Spanish army. We don't get to see his ultimate fate, but given the time period, none of the likely outcomes are pleasant. At best, he's dragged off and imprisoned for the rest of his life. And at worst, he's forced into a life of manual labor or executed once he stops being useful. Unlike the other villains on this list who at least find peace after death, Zekel Khan faces a prolonged kind of doom. And our final speculated villain death on this list doesn't sound so peachy either. We have Dave from Penguins of Madagascar, who spends the whole movie desperate for attention, only to get the absolute worst version of it.
So cute!
Trapped in a snow globe, it looks like Dave might finally get the affection he's been craving this entire time. Or not. The movie leaves his fate ambiguous, but none of the possibilities are good. Best case scenario, he somehow adapts and survives in there. Worst case scenarios, well, there are many to choose from. 1. He could get slammed around the globe until his insides are basically soup. 2. He could get cut on the sharp little structures inside. 3. He could slowly starve to death with no food. So, although there's no way to know for sure what happens to Dave, all scenarios point to a pretty gruesome DreamWorks villain death.